Well, welcome back to the show. We have another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. We're kind of using Irene today, Irene Jones with IJ Photo. Kind of a redux. We're kind of starting. I've been a little lazy the last couple months with sourcing new, Get to Know Your Wedding Pro vendors. Irene has a new studio to show off. Plus, Irene and I are just always game for a chat. So we're going to go through this today, talk with Irene, get to know Irene Jones. We're going to see her studio. How does that sound, Irene?
That sounds excellent, Reed.
First off, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
We're good. I was telling Irene before we got on, a lot of my energy goes into sourcing our football guests for my non-work related podcasts. And so I rely a lot on Get to Know Your Wedding Pro vendors. If you're interested in coming on, sharing your story, you can go to bestmadevideos.com/podcast guest. But I've really been relying on that the last few months, people to kind of reach out and schedule. And I'm realizing I need to be more proactive with reaching out again. So we are starting today. I think it was 4 years I started this this week. I got a reminder about it. So,
that's kind of a nice anniversary.
It is, and we're celebrating together. So people that, if anyone in this world doesn't know who Irene Jones are, what is your little elevator pitch? Who are you?
Yeah, so I'm Irene Jones. I own IJ Photo. I'm a wedding and portrait photographer. I've been shooting professionally for over 20 plus years, and I really love storytelling, photojournalism, true to life, vivid color, and just authentic people in authentic, real love.
Also sponsored the Seattle Wedding Show, right?
Yeah.
Irene and I spent a lot of time. It's good. For someone that's been doing this for so long, right, in the Northwest, just being established, right? Because a lot of the vendors we get, been doing it 2 or 3 years, whatever. I mean, big, broad takeaways. I mean, when you look back in all your time that you've spent and all the couples and the business and everything, I mean, what strikes you the most?
What strikes me really is that people who honestly care about one another and a family that care about one another tend to have the best weddings. So if you're just doing it to put on a show because you have to, that shows up, people can see it. And I get better photos out of people that just want to have a great time and really love their partner and are just excited to be there.
Yeah, I remember we had Ray Van Winkle on years ago, and he said it's almost not even the wedding, it's the planning of the wedding and kind of the couple figuring out the family stuff and the religion stuff and the money stuff and all that kind of stuff. It's even more important than the actual day spent. It's kind of all that shared experience going into it.
Absolutely. And I think a wedding's a really good time capsule of who you are and who you surround yourself with. If your wedding day comes off as an event that everyone has a great time and you really look back at that as a wonderful memory, you might be doing something right.
That's good. So you are married, lots of kids. Anything else we should know about you personally? Because we want to dive into business stuff. But who is Irene outside of IJ Photo?
Outside of work, I'm a hobbyist baker, a reader. I love reading. I love audiobooks because then I can do it while working. So I feel like I'm cheating. And I am a mom of 4 kids. My oldest is 17 and my youngest is 7. So I'm a busy lady, but there's always time for a chat with you, Reed.
That's good. Yeah. But also, and do a lot of weddings. We always work together kind of all over the Pacific Northwest. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's anywhere that you stray away from. It seems like you're, I guess, a local favorite in a lot of different spots. Where do you like to photograph?
I love photographing in spaces that have high ceilings. That's my number one thing. I walk in and I'm like, I can light this space. This is going to be awesome. But generally, I do love all venues. I do love all kinds of things. There isn't one particular type of wedding venue or wedding that I'm really like, that's my style. I really just am more interested in the people and the relationships. But I do travel all over the country and outside the country. Not so much in the last couple years, but I do love heading down to Mexico. I love hitting Canada whenever I can. And I'm still looking at getting to Italy or Iceland. Those are on my bucket list.
Well, and one thing that's always, because obviously I work with a lot of different photographers and love all of, we have good relationships with a lot, but besides being personable, right, and being able to kind of get along, you have a technical skill with lighting and stuff, right, that I don't even really understand sometimes with video, just because I don't go in and set up, all these different lights and stuff, but, I think certain couples, natural light, right, is a skill, and people, and if it's outside, and anyone can kind of make stuff work in a kind of overcast day outside, but being able to do a lot of the inside weddings that we've done together, right, like the Rainier Club, even the club at Snoqualmie, kind of the indoor reception, it takes a different skill that I just don't know if every photographer is always equipped to do.
Oh, well, that's a great compliment. I've worked really hard to be able to light any space and work with the natural light when necessary, and then augment as necessary. I have a very distinct vision of how I want the day to look, and I want people to be able to see the emotion in the image and not necessarily the stuff that's distracting. And being able to bring in a little bit of augmented lighting really helps me do that, so I can get in there and tell a story instead of necessarily just capture what happens to be the scene. And a lot of times people tell me they think my work is natural light because they can't tell the difference between what I've done and what was there. But then they see the photo side by side and like, oh, that's totally different. That's what I was imagining in my head. So my job is really to make that imaginary vision show up in reality.
Well, it's hard, especially when, a lot of moving around, we're wrangling the bridal party, we're wrangling the families. But, we've shot, and I've even remember sending over videos that I had shot of the photos that you had or whatever. And I'm like, it doesn't even look like the same space in a good way. It looks like maybe more like you remember it more than, because video, we are limited sometimes in like you are kind of capturing as everything occurs, where photo, you can elevate it. But like you said, it doesn't come across being like abnormal. It comes across more as you remembered it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I think our brains are really good at remembering the best things, and we don't always remember the ugly, but it exists everywhere. Even in the best spaces, there's dark corners, there's things that just aren't flattering. And our job, you and me, is to make the best of every scenario.
So you live right up Lake Stevens?
Yeah.
And is that, so you've got your new studio, right? So you were, obviously, that's kind of the dream, right? As a photographer, have your own studio, be able to work out of it. What was the thought process behind kind of establishing that and going that route?
Well, I've actually had a studio twice before, but just circumstances have made things change. Like my first studio was just this tiny little hole in the wall here in Everett, and I grew out of it within a couple years. My second space ended up being bought by a developer and turned into condos. So when that got taken over, I was a little bit homeless for a while, and this space opened up. And like I said, it's just been amazing. And you're totally right. It's the dream, like to have a space where you can work indoor and outdoor. In Washington, we have such fickle weather that it's really nice to be able to bring a client a backup option with everything.
So what is having the studio space, what has that allowed you to be able to kind of either add back into your inventory of services or be able to kind of help make it easier to provide those services?
Yeah. So I tried to be a photographer for people's lifetime and not just for their event. So I love starting with an engagement session. And a lot of times people are getting engaged in the dark winter months. So the studio makes that really plausible to get those engagement photos out quickly. It also helps, like I said, with bad weather. The studio is also great for when they have other life events. So post-wedding, a lot of people decide to have children. And so the studio is a great place for a new mama to get a pregnancy and maternity shoot done. It's also great for newborns as well as families, time and time again. And I've been in the business long enough that I've got clients that have been coming to me for now 2 decades. And it's really great for me to be able to see those families grow and change over time.
It's one of the things that I kind of lament most about the video side of it is not, you don't have as many times when you need to hire a videographer where, like you said, even if it's back to school photos or Christmas photos, or, hey, we want to do a spring thing, or someone, excuse me, lost a tooth, or I don't know, you want to document all these things where, I don't know if that's the thing, but with video, it's kind of like the wedding, then maybe the sister gets married, but I do envy that you get to kind of live with your clients over time, because I don't often get to kind of run into people again.
Right. Unless you're like in the grocery store and it's awkward.
Well, it is always awkward because like I feel like I know them way more than they know me, because I was like, I've stared at your face for many hours, and they're like, okay, like, right. I knew you for 8 hours 3 years ago. It's like, yeah, but you've been on my website since then.
Right, exactly. I also bring my clients post-wedding into the studio to show them their photos. So you can see my projector back up here in the corner. I always do a slideshow for everybody so they get to relive all the photos. We go through their album design and talk about like how to use the images too. I think it's a huge shame for someone to spend all the time and energy of creating beautiful photos and then just to leave them on a hard drive or just on social media. So I'm always encouraging people to put them in an album, put them on the wall, make sure that they're really something that you enjoy every day.
I like that. I like the reveal. Is that, I mean, talk me through kind of what is that like from your side, being able to bring them in and kind of show off the photos for them after it's done?
Oh, it's really handy for me to know if I did a good job. A lot of times people are sitting on my couch crying, which is a little awkward, but like a good awkward, because I want them to feel those emotions. I want them to feel like when they've seen their 20-minute slideshow that they've been through their entire day again.
It's also, yeah, the good way to know if you did a good job, but also like smooth over maybe anything. Maybe if you didn't do a good job, you kind of like you kind of get lost in the moment, right? Like, that's where my key early on in my career was I would try to get them their video on their honeymoon, because it's like it's all gravy at that point. And then by the time you get back, what did we like about that? It's kind of all all fades away. But it has to be a cool experience for you and the clients to be able to kind of live through that together.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've got popcorn here in the studio. So we chill, we have a bite. It's fun.
So how did you get into, and I know we kind of rehashed this on the original Get to Know Your Wedding Pro that you were on many years ago, but how did you kind of enter the world of wedding photography?
I don't even remember what I said then. And I always give people multiple different reasons. So let's see if this one matches. I've always loved events. I've always loved people and getting to know people and telling stories. I wanted to be a photojournalist. And after really looking into what that was like and kind of the lifestyle, I moved towards weddings because I felt like it was going to be a long-term, just better fit for me.
Why did you feel that way?
I didn't like the fashion industry. I tried it. There was a little bit of cocaine involved, not on my part, other people's. And I just was like, that's a little different. That's not my crowd. And then I tried, I was watching the industry for photojournalism and especially print journalism not really going very far. And I mean, I was graduating from college in 1999. So that was right on the eve of when press and journalism was really changing. And I just saw that as not necessarily the path forward.
So you decided on weddings. How did you kind of do? Was it a jump in head first? I mean, how did you kind of enter that world then?
My very first wedding, a friend suggested that I photograph for her sister. And her sister and her partner, I have no idea if they're still together. It was a green card wedding, so it very well may not have been. And I got kind of hooked. It was fun to feel the energy and the excitement and watch the people hugging one another and laughing. And I got addicted to it real quick.
It's interesting because I was in kind of that video journalism world, right, and transitioned into weddings, and it was kind of the same. I was just talking to someone, it must have been at our wedding over the weekend. I was talking to someone about that, feeling that energy, right? Where when I was in news, it was always a very negative, like, we don't want you around, right? You're always there when something bad is happening. And to, like you said, be able to feel that energy and joy and people are celebrate you being there and kind of capturing everything. It was a really nice feeling that I hadn't really gotten a lot of in the last 8 years of my career before that point,
Oh, for sure. There's definitely a wedding high that comes along with this industry. And I always go home and tell my husband, oh my gosh, they were so cute and they were so in love and the cake was delicious, and give him all the details.
You still get that to this day?
Oh, yeah.
Because, it's a long, sometimes I come home, I'm a little tired, but that's good. I mean, you've been doing it a long time, but to be able to still kind of get that high and that buzz off of it.
Yeah, I take more ibuprofen now than I used to, but that's the real difference.
How do you keep things fresh now, having done it? Obviously, we have a little bit of rinse and repeat, right? I think that helps. I like having that aspect because then I'm not walking into surprises, right? I kind of like knowing what's going on, and then I can experiment kind of within that framework. But how do you keep things fresh for you and all your weddings?
Oh, that's a great question. I always try to challenge myself to do something different. So I'll tell myself at the beginning of the day, today I'm going to take X shot that's on their list, but I'm going to do it in 3 different ways than I did last time. So that way I always come out with something that surprises me as well as them. And I always am looking for new angles and new ways to kind of tell the story, because there's always a different perspective that you can shoot from.
Are you finding, weddings happening now, couples now, same, different than maybe it was 10 years ago, or, whenever you entered them, or has things kind of shifted over time?
Oh, I think that definitely there's trends, and the things that couples are anticipating do change. I mean, like when I first started, the black and white with like a pop of color was really big. And I'm so glad that that's not a trend anymore, because that was god awful. But there's definitely trends now that are pretty gross. And I get asked about that regularly. And I just tell clients like, hey, this is what my style is. This is how I can really create something for you. If you like what you see on the website, that's what I can give you.
Is it hard? Do you find challenges marketing nowadays? So many photographers, right? So many different vendors. I mean, I have this too with video. Like, how do you stand out and kind of make your mark for the clients to book you?
I love the wedding show. The wedding show is a great marketing piece for me. I love being able to talk to people face to face, and that's such a great way for couples that are coming through to really get a good opportunity to see the vendor and see kind of their style at the same time. This sounds horrible, I feel like to say, but I don't do a lot of marketing. At this point, I'm out in Seattle Bride, I'm at the wedding show, and I advertise on Google and on Facebook. And generally, the clients are coming to me and they're saying, hey, we love your style. We love everything on your website. Where do I sign? So it's gotten a little bit easier. I'm not convincing people as much, but I feel like a lot of it's just doing a good job of telling people on my website and in other forms, this is what you can expect from me.
That's the hardest thing for, I think, transitioning from when you're a new vendor starting out and then trying to transition to a seasoned vendor, is that you just do the best you can. If they don't want to book or it doesn't work out, it's just not the right fit. I remember I used to you'd lament every single, oh, hey, we're going in a different direction. You'd be like, no, what did I do? But now, I mean, it really does feel that way. You have conversations and maybe I'll have an inquiry or we'll have a meeting and you don't follow up as frequently because you feel like that wasn't the right fit, right? That particular meeting. I mean, how have you kind of grown in that way over your career?
I call it the Ron Swanson style marketing. If you like it, you can have it. If you don't like it, you don't need it. But I'm with you. I don't lament those other people. I do point them in directions of others. Say someone says they really love the dark and moody style. I'm like, oh, I know a perfect photographer for you. And I send them to somebody who's got that style. I really don't think that there's going to be ever a shortage of people that want to get married. I mean, as we saw when we couldn't shoot in 2020, it just created a backlog. People are going to always fall in love. People are always going to want to be together. And so I'm just hanging out, being me. And if we get along, then great.
That is the weirdest. I mean, because I know you were on a bunch of the podcasts we did, kind of wedding planning stuff here when no one could work or whatever. And it really did feel like, okay, maybe we as an industry are going to change, or people are going to want something different, or we're going to do these scaled down micro wedding, whatever. And obviously people are going to elope, whatever. But it really did seem like the second you could have a 200-person wedding again, we just wanted to do that.
Right. And you know what? I'm totally okay with that. I really missed the big weddings and all the people.
Is it nice to go? I mean, because I do feel like the last couple I've done, we're kind of finally getting back to you still have sanitizer sitting on the table, but for the most part, it feels like it's a little bit more back to normal.
Yeah. I feel like if you just snipped out a couple years, then nothing's really different.
It's very odd. I know we're going back and trying to blog some of the weddings now that we're kind of in the dark times. And I'm like, well, it was weird. It's really weird. But it does really feel like you could just go from, January 2020 to now and just nothing. We didn't skip a beat.
Right. And you know what? That shows the resilience of the industry, the resilience of love, and the resilience of people, that they're going to always want to be together. They're going to always want to really connect with others. And no virus can really take that away from us.
I hear a lot from photographers, right? It's my work, right? Obviously, you want your work to sell, but obviously, it's like your relationships too, right? That you build with the client. Talking about that, like you said, you love to meet people at the wedding shows, get to know them, right? Having done so many weddings, you can give people advice, whatever. How does that work for you with the client, kind of client and you relationship in that way?
Oh, I love listening and I love asking people questions. I kind of wish right now that I was on the opposite side and I was asking you the question. It's fun to hear what people have to say because nobody ever answers anything the exact same way. You would think after 22 years that I would get the same answers from all my clients, and everybody always surprises me. And I love the surprise of that, and generally just trying to find a way to get inside their brains. So a lot of times I'll do walkthroughs even when I know a venue well with a client, because I want to try to see it through their eyes and understand what they love about the space, because I want them to really resonate with their images and feel like I told their story from their perspective and not necessarily my own.
It's hard. I deal with that a lot with videography, where I think a lot of the videography companies run it a little bit more like an art form than they do a business, right? Where they, like you said, they want to tell it their way or kind of interpret it their way, right? And it's weird. I've always, like you, try to have that opposite, like, well, how do you guys want it told, right? What do you guys want it focused on? But it's weird. I see a lot of comments like that in like videography Facebook groups of like, well, they wanted me to do it this way. And isn't that so crazy? Because like I'm the artist, and it's like, yeah, but it's also, it's like a service industry, right? I mean, we're educated and experienced to go in, but ultimately they're still the ones kind of paying for it. It's a weird dynamic that way.
Well, it's a commission. You can definitely be an artist, but you have to understand that when Vermeer was painting for a client, he painted what the client wanted. When Vermeer was painting for himself, he painted the girl with the pearl earring. And that's a masterwork, right? So you have to know what your audience is, and you have to adapt to your audience.
So did you end up doing, I can't remember, any schooling for wedding, photography going into it? Was it all learning on the case on the field? I mean, how did that work out?
I went to the Art Institute of Seattle and got a degree in commercial photography. And every couple of years, I go back and do training classes with master photographers.
Do you feel like that, having that experience and that having kind of gone through that, better equipped you to be able to go into the kind of knowing what you were doing in the field?
Oh, absolutely. I learned that it was a business. First of all, instead of an art form, it was an art that you sold. And I think that really put me on a good footing to make money and to be able to be profitable. I always see these photographers who are like a couple years in and they're super burnt out and they're struggling, or they're not charging enough. And so they don't know how to really run their business. And then they have this great work, but they can't get anywhere with it. And that's sad. We do live in a capitalist world, and we should probably adapt accordingly.
Well, and it's just a lot. I mean, even our wedding on Saturday, a long day and travel. I mean, it's just a lot of work goes into it. I mean, if you do the math of how many pennies per hour you get by the time you consult and do all the, whatever. I mean, it's weird because it's such a price tag on it that people see, but they don't see. Yeah, they see 8 hours on the wedding day or 12 hours on the wedding day, but they don't see the 87 hours of everything else that goes into it.
Oh, yeah. And I try to be really visible actually with my clients and tell them about that. So during my consultation, we talk about, okay, here's the schedule of when you're going to get your photos. Here's when the sneak peek's going to happen. And here's what I'm doing in the interim. So they have an idea of what the process is, because I understand they don't know. And I feel like everybody is better off when we're educated.
It's just hard. Like even the one Saturday I had to do a stream for it, and there was just a lot of issues with the internet and the people that were doing the audio. There was just a lot of, and I was like, me even 2 or 3 years ago, like I don't think I could have figured out how to troubleshoot all this, right? Going into it, right? And it's like you really are paying for not only the work that you're doing, right, but those years, and like you and 20 years and going to the Art Institute and all the hundreds of weddings and all of that rolled into it. And I just don't. It's hard to verbalize that sometimes. Maybe you do a better job in your consults than I do.
You've just made me think I need to raise my prices, Reed.
Right, but your price for kind of high end, right? I mean, you get a premium. I would say you get a premium experience, right, with your packages.
Yeah, value is important to me. So I do charge more than, say, like a photographer who's just starting out, but I'm definitely not charging like the highest end out there. And my goal is to work with normal people, and I want normal people to be able to afford me, but also feel like they got a great value.
That's the thing. I mean, people never don't realize that. Like, you know, if you charge super high, it's almost if you charge too less or too much, because the people that don't pay anything want the most. And then if you're charging these photographers charging like 8, 10 grand, I see online, I'm like, I don't want to deal with that either, because that is a lot of pressure to, like, you know, you can't have anything go wrong at all. You got to be right in the middle there.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I just did the math. Like, where's most people? They're in the middle. And I feel like if I want to get good quality clients that are authentic, real people, then I'm going to have to go to the middle.
You talked a lot about, you know, other photographers and, you know, maybe not charging enough, or, you know, you've been doing this and been able to look around. I mean, what are some common mistakes you see people getting burnt out? I mean, anything else you see other photographers maybe listening to this advice that they could take?
Oh, yeah. Know your numbers. Know how much your cost of living is, and know how much you got to make. If you were working a regular 9 to 5, how much would you be making a week? You should be making the same amount as an entrepreneur. And a lot of people get scared and they think, well, I can't charge that. No one's going to pay that. Well, you don't have to have them pay it all up front. A lot of times people think that they need to throw like this all-inclusive package. A lot of my clients will purchase albums later, and they'll start with one of my lower packages, and then they'll purchase some wall art, and they'll purchase an album. And honestly, their price tag ends up being the bigger package, but they're allowed to do it in increments. There's ways to make it work and make your bottom line without starving yourself and also doing a disservice to your industry.
And as you do your photos, right, you provide them and then you upcharge for you're not like an in-person. Are you IPS, or you deliver and then you have the additional upsells?
Yeah, so we do this reveal and the sales meeting at the same time. So I do all in-person sales for my clients on the sessions as well as on their weddings.
And so I mean, obviously you feel like that's a successful way to do that, because, right, there's different ways that you can run and sell. I mean, I don't exist in that world, so maybe educate me and others about kind of the difference there.
Yeah, so the idea of an in-person sales consultation is that after your event, you're going to sit down with me, we're going to talk about, and I'm going to help educate you on what to do with your photos. Because every time I ask a client, what do you want to do with these? The answer is, I don't know. They've never thought about it. So my job is to really help them understand that they should be putting wall art up on their house because they honestly want it most times, or putting an album together if they're not crazy about hanging photos of themselves on the wall. And that doing that, you need to make sure that they're high quality products, because these things in particular, you want to last a lifetime. If you go to a big box store and get like a Costco canvas or whatever, it's going to last for maybe 5 years before it'll start to fade. And then you're going to put a couple $100s into that, even at Costco, and then it's going to discolor, and you're going to see it yellow or brown, or the colors fade completely, and it's not going to look like what you remember it looking like, because time and age and sunlight all work against things and destroy them slowly. But professional labs that only work through professional photographers provide 100-year archival papers, or acid-free materials, or UV protectants on the tops of all of these things, so that they're guaranteed to last a lifetime.
Remind me not to tell you where Dorothy prints are.
Oh yeah, no, don't tell me.
But not really the wedding one. I mean, more just like the cell phone stuff. But no, I know what you mean. Like, we'll get back some of those, and I'm just like, this doesn't even look in the same world as what the photo was.
Right. Well, and that's another big thing, is a lot of the big box stores don't do any amount of color correcting. So you'll see your photo on the monitor, and then you'll see your print. And you're like, these don't match. They look completely different. I'm going to make sure that what you see in your digital files look exactly the same as what your print looks like. And if it doesn't match, I replace it.
But like you said, it's one of those things where people want it. They just don't. It's what you just kind of got to be pushed to do it. Like, even hanging up the art in our house that we have, once you get it up, you're like, oh, we love it, and it feels so homey in here. But it's not something that you're sitting there every night like, man, we gotta get on this, you know.
Oh yeah. You made me think of when we brought our oldest son home from the hospital. We had this really shitty couch and it was doing its job because we were sitting on it. We didn't care. The second we brought that baby into the house, we thought, we can't put this kid on this couch. There comes a point in your life when you start understanding what quality is about and why you buy things that are quality. And a lot of times that happens for people after they've married and settled down.
I would be curious to hear, and you were on our great, I think, Do's and Don'ts of Wedding Toast episode or whatever, the Best Made Weddings podcast. But some favorite memories from weddings, something that really made you howl, in recent memory, something that you lived through, a funny story?
Oh, that's good. There's a lot of them. Couple weekends ago, it didn't make me laugh, it made me cry. This dad had an adopted daughter, and they'd adopted her at birth, and he got together with the DJ and he recorded in a sound studio or something this little monologue for her because he knew he couldn't get through it in person. And he was saying how when he was holding her in the hospital after birth mom had given him the baby for the first time, he sang this little song to her, and he repeated the song that he sang. And he said, but I figured we couldn't dance to that for 3 minutes. So I thought, let's dance to this instead. And then the music came on, and it was the song that he used to sing to her every night when she was a little girl. And I am just bawling behind the camera because it was so beautiful and so sentimental. And you could really feel the love of this dad for this daughter in that moment.
Well, and you've talked about that before on here, that once you've had kids and kind of imagining yourself being in those situations when they get married, it adds a different level of connection. I mean, to any client, but when you're at weddings, it is weird. Once you, like, after I got married, I couldn't get through the first couple of vows that people had, at the weddings that I shot afterward. I mean, you really do feel in that moment.
Oh, absolutely. Because you've been there. You remember what it was like when you and Dorothy got married, and you think like, yeah, I think I want to stay with this person. This is good.
But talk about that though with you and kind of with your family and feeling that connection, because I kind of took the thunder from the story when I was asking the question.
I constantly reimagine what it's going to be like when my kids get married. I have 4 of them, and honestly, my oldest son has never been really into dating. He's going on his first date this next weekend. It's super cute. And I can't wait to see who they bring home and who these people are that are going to love them the way that I love them. And weddings really do look different from the side of a parent. And you don't know until you get there, but it's a great place.
Yeah, you have. I mean, we don't have kids yet, but Dorothy's sister, little 2 nieces and nephew, and it's interesting, how they kind of find their way in the world and see them grow. And you're like, I never would have thought that, like, when it was this little peanut, whatever, now they're going to school and stuff. It's interesting to see how the world kind of shapes them and they grow on. It's really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool.
I want you to be able to give us a tour here of your studio for the YouTube viewers, not the audio listeners. Before we get out of here, do you want to show off your studio? You have your wonderful canvas behind you. Is that one of the ones that hangs at the wedding show?
Yeah, I can start by showing you this. Let me flip the camera around so you can see.
Irene is going to give us a virtual tour of her. We're going to see how this works out. This first time.
Okay, yeah, this could go bad, but let's try it. Let me see if I can flip my camera. I don't know if I can flip my camera. All right, we're going to try it this way. So yeah, this is my huge 4-foot by 9-foot print. It's a wood print that I show up at the wedding show. And then this is my space where my clients come to view their photos. So there's the big screen, and the clients just hang out over here on the couch, and we watch a little movie, talk about all the fun things. Behind me here, we've got my frame wall. So these are all 28 different options of frames. And then over here, you can see this is one of the shooting stations that I've got. So I've got this flower wall that I made. It looks really cute for little girls, and Valentine's was really fun to shoot on that. And then this space that I'm walking into now, this is the actual studio. So we've got some lovely natural light. That's my bed set in the back. And then over here, we've got the big gray wall that I use for a lot of family portraits. And then I've got my corner full of all my lighting gear. It's a fun space. It's not gigantic, but it's perfect for what I'm looking for because it allows me at least 5 different spots that I can set up for clients to give them all sorts of different looks.
And where is it located now?
I'm off of Baker Avenue in Everett, right by the PUD.
Well, it looks great. Like I said, the key to that, it's so hard with the studios because you're really kind of locked into the space. Very versatile, right? Where you have the brick there and you have the gray wall and you were able to set the backdrop. I mean, that's nice because that's my always thing. Even with, I would have no use for it with my little video stuff, but it's like, you're kind of locked into whatever the look is. It does seem like it's a very versatile space. Talk through, I know we mentioned some of the things that you do, but baby shoots and everything, like all the kind of stuff that you can do there.
Yeah, I do engagement shoots here, families. I do maternity as well. So just about any age, any milestone that's important. I love doing kids. In fact, I do a milestone package where you can get like birth through the first year.
Oh, that's exciting. Is that, so talk me through that. That's something cool.
Yeah, so like a newborn stage and then 4 months, 8 months, and a year. So you get a mini session basically for each of those. So you don't have to stress out about, oh my gosh, is my kid going to make it through an hour? Because they're not. They're going to make it through about 20 minutes. But it gives you a really fun collection of photos. And at a year, we do a cake smash. And I even make the cake because I love baking.
That's an all-inclusive. That's start to finish thing. And obviously, we were talking before we recorded, you had just taken photos of one of your children. I mean, you just very good at being a mother, working with all the ages of kids and everything else, right? From little kids to older. Just not everyone is equipped to that. I work with a lot of young men and women photographers that maybe would not be as equipped to work with children of all ages in that way.
Oh, yeah. I've always loved kids. I joke that I like them better than their parents.
Well, it's small doses is always the key for that.
Right.
I'm sure you like me a lot more than Dorothy does some days because it's small doses. You know what I mean? Anything else we want to get through on this? I'm glad we got to see your studio, kind of walk through the Get to Know Your Wedding Pro process, talked a little bit about what you do, why you do it. Anything else you want to share with us today?
I wish I had something else smart to say, Reed, but I feel like we covered it all.
It's good. It's exciting, but this is kind of an example of a Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. Like I said, we talk a little bit how you got into the business, talk a little bit about your home life, personal life, stuff like that. I think it's so interesting. You could have 15 different photographers or videographers, and every single person's career path gets them to a different way that they're going to look at things unlike anyone else. I'm very different than a lot of the other videographers. Irene has a totally different skill set than other photographers, and I think this is an interesting, good way to kind of showcase this a little bit longer form podcast. So
yeah, excellent. I love that you do this. I think it's a really valuable resource.
Well, we're going to get back on the horse with this one. If people want to learn more about you, what you do, see styles of your photography, where would you have them go?
Visit ijphoto.net.
And check out the studio. You have all the information with the studio on there as well?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Irene, it's always great to connect. I really appreciate it. If you're like Irene and you want to come on a future episode of the podcast, you can go to bestmadevideos.com/podcast guests. And that's a nice, easy questionnaire to get you set up. Anything else?
No, we're good.
We did it. All right, guys. See you next time. Thanks.